Welcome to A Slob Comes Clean, the podcast. I'm Dana K. White. I blog over at aslobcomesclean.com. That's where I share my personal deslobification process. As I figure out ways to keep my own home under control, I share the truth about cleaning and organizing strategies that actually work in real life for real people who don't love cleaning and organizing. Thanks for joining me today. This is podcast number 210, and I am calling it Teenagers and Young Adults and Cleaning and Decluttering, or something like that. I am talking to my friend Connie Albers, who is just a lovely, encouraging person who, when you talk to her, you go, and she talks about teenagers, and we're going to talk about teenagers. Her kids are all young adults at this point. They've all graduated from college, and some of them are married, some of them are not. You know, they're kind of in that stage of moving out for a little while, moving back in, moving out, whatever. Anyway, so we're talking about some of the unique challenges of that and parenting teenagers. There are a couple times where I thought, I need to clarify that. There's nothing that's not correct. I just sometimes feel like Connie thinks I have it more together than I do. So I know that sounds goofy. Anyway, and I can't remember what those parts were now, but if I ever go or don't say anything and you're thinking, is Dana acting like she has it all together now? I don't. I know I don't. Anyway, but I think you're going to love Connie, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm here with Connie. Hi, Connie.
Hey, Dana. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you again. We saw each other, about a month ago?
Seems like, yes. It was wonderful down in downtown Fort Worth, right?
Yes, Fort Worth. So Connie is a friend of mine who you guys know. I mean, every time I have somebody on the podcast, it's because I met him at a conference. But Connie and I needed a roommate one year, and she needed a roommate. And we kind of were those people who were like, hey, do you want to be roommates?
Do you snore?
I think I actually really, really do now, but my daughter lies and says that I do, and I'm like, whatever. I'll bring earplugs for you next time. So, it's funny because I always have that personal insecurity when I have a roommate that I don't expect anybody, but especially somebody I don't know, because especially in the blogging context, because my site is A Slob Comes Clean. So what were your thoughts when you found out you were going to be rooming with an actual slob?
Well, I figured it was only for a few days. We can pretty much handle anything, right?
Okay. Well, and that's something about you is you're very you have a lot of fun, and you're very open with hey, whatever y'all want to do, talk about, great. So I never felt judged by you. So I appreciate that very much.
No judgment here. That's for sure.
So Connie is coming on. She has a new book out that came out recently. I am recording this ahead of time. I will actually be not doing anything for a week because I'm having surgery. So I'm so excited to get stuff done ahead of time and plan on just watching Netflix for an entire week. Is it bad that I'm excited about that?
No, I think that's called super cool. You're going to be ahead of the game, and you're not going to feel guilty when you're, chomping on popcorn and watching Netflix.
I mean, the pain and all that kind of stuff, whatever, but I get to do nothing for a week and not feel bad about it.
Well, and they give you stuff for that. So there you go.
Okay. So your book is called Parenting Beyond the Rules. I have this fear for you that when people say your book title, they're going to say what they say with mine, a similar thing. So with mine, it's Decluttering at the Speed of Life, but people will say Decluttering at the Speed of Light, which is actually exactly the opposite, And I keep wanting to say Parenting by the Rules, and yet that's the complete opposite of what your book is. So anyway, have you had that happen yet?
All the time. I mean, Isn't it true? We all love rules, limits, boundaries, and you and I love checklists, and, I love checklists. So for me, putting up a bunch of rules and limits and boundaries, it's just kind of happy. It makes me feel like I'm going to run my home smoothly and everybody's going to be joyful because they
and
can
it's my opportunity to be perfect. Right.
Yes. And it doesn't work that way, which is why I say beyond the rules. Mm-hmm. That's the whole purpose of what we're doing. I mean, we're naturally going to default to rules and limits and boundaries because it does help decrease chaos, but it it gives us a false sense of, this is how it's going to work. And we forget we're dealing with like humans, and humans don't always work that way. Just like
they have these things called opinions.
And boy, do they have them.
Boy, do they. So your book, let's go back. I want you to tell me about you and tell me about your family.
Okay, so I'm a mother of 5 now adult children, and there was a season in our parenting because we have 5 children in 6 years. So for your listeners, that means we had 5 teenagers for a lot of years in our home. And I am married to a wonderful man. We've been married to Tom is my husband, and we've been married for 34 years. And so I've just had this wonderful opportunity to kind of come alongside my kids and learn as they were growing and changing. But more than that, I was able to work with teenagers for about 20 years. And I listened. I just intently listened to what they said about what their parents wanted or wouldn't listen, or what they wish they would hear. And for some reason, Dana, I just started taking note, mental note, physical notes. And I'd write down some of the stories they would tell me, not knowing that one day this would actually become a book. I so badly wanted to understand what made them, flourish and thrive, and what made them want to gravitate toward their parents, but what made them push away from them.
Well, and my daughter, at the time we're recording this, has been 13 for less than a week. So I officially now have 3 teenagers. This is my phase of life at the time. And this book is about teenagers.
Yeah.
Specifically focused on teenagers. And what I find, and what I hear as a complaint from a lot of people is that, nobody talks about the teenage years. Nobody talks about the teenage years. Of course, as a mom of teenagers, I'm like, well, that's because teenagers don't like to be talked about.
Isn't that true?
Yeah, please don't, put me out there as being some certain thing, because guess what? In an hour, they may change their mind about how they want to be portrayed. So, what I am thankful for is that you've made it through that stage, and now you're willing to talk about it, because I think that's important, to say that you're not in the middle of it. You have made it through, and this is how you did it. So we're going to talk about just some basics with messy kids. You probably didn't have any, I'm sure.
Oh, that would be not true.
We're going to talk about messy kids and the relationships and all that. But I want to know, was there a moment, like a specific moment that you can think of when you realized that this book needed to be written by you?
Oh, yes. My second daughter of 5, we were standing in the parking lot of Panera Bread, and I was getting ready to launch a new company. My daughter's artistic, so I brought her along for the branding and the kind of like the artistic color. How did I want to do this? And we had met with another graphic designer, and we had met with social media strategist to put it all out there. And we stood in the parking lot, and I remember having my arm laid up on the car, and she said, "Mom, you've done all these really cool things." And she took her right hand and she started making a small circular motion to her left side, kind of like a DJ, when they're doing the whole, DJ thing. And I'm like, okay. And she said, "You've done really all these cool things, BC, before children." And then with her right hand, she started making another small circle to the side. And she said, "And you're doing all these really cool things now that the kids are grown." And she made this really big circle, Dana, right in the middle. And I'm looking at her like, "What are you doing?" And she was as serious as she could be. And she said, "Mom, look at this." And I'm looking at it. Trust me, I'm watching her arm go round and round. I'm like, "Get to your point." And she said, "Look at your family. Look at what you and Daddy have built. Look at the relationships we have." And she said, "Mom, this is what you need to be doing. You need to pour in to other women and help them in their season of parenting." And I mean, isn't that what every mother longs for? We don't really ever hear that in the teenage years, unless, of course, they want to, like in, your case, they want the keys to the car, they want to go to a sleepover or a party. And then it's like, "Mom, you're so wonderful and amazing." And we know we're being played. But to hear this from a 24-year-old who absolutely knew all of your shortfalls and your shortcomings, she knew, the times you were mad at her dad and you guys were fighting. She knew me at my worst, but yet she's saying, "Look at us." And I thought, wow.
As a family.
As a family. Yeah. Not because she knew, Dana, we didn't do it perfectly. We had fights and arguments, and we had moments where nobody was really happy, especially mom. You know, the whole thing, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And so that was a turning point for me. That was truly a game changer. I thought, this is something I need to pay attention to. And I just started down that journey.
And it's also that permission, like we were talking about, teenagers don't want to be talked about, but she was giving you permission. Hey, you did something right. You need to share with other people. Because I think that's the thing too, is what I love about teenagers is they don't like to be talked about, but they love to talk to their friends about themselves, you know, so they're sharing among themselves. I mean, I hear all the time, I'm like, well, you know, this is what so-and-so says goes on in her family. Of course, I'm always like, just so you know, you know, I'm pretty sure that might be a skewed view of what's going on in that family. But, you know, so I do. I mean, but I hear that from my kids. And so they know what their friends are struggling with. And if, you know, they want you to share that. I think that's awesome.
You know, what you said there, I'm just going to caveat from that real quick. What you said there is flat out incredible wisdom, because you're listening to what their friends are saying. And I will tell you right now, and all of your listeners, you will glean more information about your children by getting to know their friends than you will from your children just kind of coming to you, because you are learning what their friends are struggling with. Their friends know more about them than we really do. And that's an important thing to remember during the teen years. They're trying to grow up and pull away and become adults. So it's kind of normal, but they do confide with their friends. So come alongside those friends and, you know, invite them for dinner.
Well, one of my favorite, I've said this before on the podcast, one of my favorite things that I did not expect to be a favorite thing is that my husband and I have been doing a Sunday night group for 9th and 10th graders for the last several years. And we'll have a kid in there. Like our oldest was in there for 2 years, and then our middle is in there right now, and then our youngest will be. So it'll about 6 years we'll have somebody in there. And it's amazing how much more you get to know your kids when you see them interacting with other people their age, you know, and I feel like it's helped with our trust level too, because I'm there when kids are sharing things, you know, that anyway, we're getting off topic here, but I think that's been valuable. And I know I've heard you talk a lot about embracing that and making it very purposeful. So like, this is off script of the questions that we talked about, but tell me about, you opened up your home, right, to a young adult Bible study. At what point did you do that? And what was your motivation? And what are the benefits that you saw from that?
We started that during the kids' high school years. And we had always been
high schoolers, or was it for older?
It was for high schoolers. Now, obviously, there were some middle schoolers and there were some college kids. So we didn't like totally narrow it, but it was primarily for high schoolers. And I provided, you know, 3 things: food, which they always want to eat. And we had 3 dishes that we made. That was tacos, spaghetti, and chili. They always knew I would cycle those 3 because they're inexpensive. And I'd make a big 10-pound like thing of it. They always knew there was going to be food. Food is a big draw for kids. Yeah. Then there would be fellowship. So they knew that after the Bible study, then they could play ping pong, or they could play cornhole in the front yard, or do whatever. And that became a time where I got to do what you just said, study my kids. What were they doing? Who did they gravitate to? What were they laughing at? What conversations were they having? How were some of them really paying attention to the needs of others? And then how many of them were given more toward hospitality? That lasted for well over 10 years. So because like you said, well, we have the first kid in there now, and then we have the second kid coming, and the third kid's going to go through. So we continued that to the very last child was in his second year of college. So the group morphed and changed over time. Sometimes kids would be there for a season. Sometimes kids would be there for a semester. Sometimes kids would be there for a whole year. We had no expectations. So we just put it out there. We're doing it. Come have fun. And the important thing that we learned from that is that our kids loved that we were given to hospitality. We were modeling something for them that we didn't realize was going to have such a major impact on their life. And to this day, they still interface with a lot of those kids.
And you know them, and you know their history, and you know their past, and you're also somebody those kids can come to you in an issue.
Yeah, like you just said, they come to you and they'll talk to you. Here's what I've learned: teenagers want to talk to somebody. I mean, look at their phones. I mean, they're blowing up by chatting with people. They want to be known. They want to be heard. Now, they don't necessarily want to be known among parents, because that would be the bad kid, right? Don't go near that kid. But they do want to be heard, and sometimes their parents may overreact or knee-jerk reaction. And so they don't feel safe. You talked about that earlier. They want to feel safe that their secrets or that whatever they're struggling with is safe to confide with somebody, because they do want wisdom. They do want guidance. They don't want to be told what to do, but we want to plant ideas of how they could possibly, and then they can take it from there. So that's kind of what we found too, is all we needed was a set of ears, and we would limit our words, and they would just open up and share what was going on.
Well, and I think too, I think sometimes when kids will share stuff in a group and my kids get to see me react to that thing, that honestly, most teenagers are going to make up how they think their parents would react to certain things. My kids will say stuff like, "Oh, you don't," and I'm like, "I have seen it all, kid." I mean, it's like, I have been around the block. Okay. But I think that helps. I mean, I hope it helps in the future for them to kind of have a frame of reference to that. Anyway, we're getting off track. Let's talk about your kids being messy.
Yes, I love
how messy your kids were, or did you have kids that were messier than others?
I did, and unfortunately, I had a neat freak and a slob, and they had to share a room. So that was an interesting dynamic because they were both girls. And people have asked me, "So did you put tape down the center of the room?" I'm like, no, I didn't do that. Probably because I didn't want to ruin the carpet or anything. But it was an interesting time. Here's the truth, because I know your audience is trying to figure out, well, what do we do when we have this child who isn't really neat and organized, but we have this child who is, and we feel like we're constantly writing and complaining and harping on that child who just can't seem to put anything away. My daughter, and this is a true story, and she doesn't mind me sharing it, but my daughter was such a slob. I mean, she had bigger.
Slobs are wonderful people, by the way.
Yes, they are. She had other things to do that were more important. As long as she knew it was like in a relative area, she could find it. Her brain functioned just fine in chaos and clutter. My other daughter's brain could not function without everything being in its place. So you have to parent different. And I remember during her teen years, she came up to me, and again, I like to have this is your chores on the refrigerator, get them done and check them off. She came up to me in her teen years and she said, "Mom, I already know what has to be done," because obviously they do know. They've lived with us forever, so they know our expectation. And she said, "I feel like a little kid when you put that chore chart up on the refrigerator, or that responsibility chart, or whatever your family calls it." And she said, "I just feel like you're treating me like a little kid." And I'm not a little kid. I'm a teenager now. Like, "Oh, yes, of course you are, dear." And she said, "Could we just take that off and just leave that for the little kids?" I'm like, "Sure." And I knew where we were going with this. I took it off the refrigerator and I said, "Okay, you just be responsible to do what you're supposed to do, and, no problem." Well, of course, you know what happens, Dana. That child gets distracted and it's not as important to them.
I am that child, just so we know. I am that child.
And I had to just kind of let go of that and say, you know what? She does know what I am expecting. She knows the why. I think the big thing is, do they know why this matters? It does matter, because it does kind of keep things from being broken and lost and, stuff like that. But the funny part of that whole story is when she grew up, became an adult, and moved out, she moved in with 4 other female roommates. This was like the parenting moment for me. She said, she called me and she said, "Mom, these girls are slobs." And I'm thinking, oh, they've really got to be bad if you're calling them a slob. And she said, "They don't do the dishes. The refrigerator is nasty. There's stuff left in there for, weeks." She goes, "The bathroom, this toothpaste is spit in the sink." And she goes, "What do I do?" And I'm like, that is music to my ears. And I said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I didn't solve her problem. I'm like, "What are you going to do?" She goes, "I'm going to create a system and put it on the refrigerator so everybody knows when to do it." Well, Dana, the fun part is that was a transition period for her. It happened in her 20s. It didn't happen in her teens. She moved back home, because you and I have talked about this before. Sometimes our kids come back. So she moved back home a very different person. There was no more dishes left in the sink. Her room was neat and tidy. She learned to appreciate the value of keeping things in their place, and she decluttered a lot. And I love what you write in your book. She learned the value of decluttering and having just what you need for that person to be able to manage what they have in an orderly format. And she also learned to appreciate the lessons I was trying to teach her. So when she moved back home, she was back with her little sister, who had that point decided having everything in its place wasn't so great because she was very busy. So do you know what she did? She put a system on the back of the bathroom door. It was like, you clean the bathroom on this day and this day. And she's like, Mom, what happened to her? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just a phase. But the sweetness of being able to watch them navigate these different seasons of them growing and maturing and slipping and falling and then eventually landing where they see there is some value to this. I think I've decided I want to be X, Y, and Z person. That was like the sweetest revenge to me. It was like you moved in to the very thing you didn't want to be.
As someone whose mother doesn't have as happy ending of a story as you do, meaning like I can remember maybe coming home from college at one point or when I had an apartment, I don't know, and doing really good on the first day trying to be an adult, And my mom being like, wow, I can tell you've really changed. And then that didn't last. But anyway, but I think the key right there though is ultimately the only thing that's really going to stick is the stuff that they personally decide to make
absolutely
priority, and so understand it because I think we all change at different phases of our life, what matters to us and all that. And realizing that it's not a failure because you didn't feel like you had fixed her before she went and moved in with those 5 roommates. Maybe that was the experience that she needed. Now,
exactly.
Not that I am not panicked. I mean, we went and visited the college with my son, and I am having those moments of he's going to be the kid that all the other kids are calling their parent and being horrible. I mean, it scares me, but anyway.
But here's the deal. Just manage your expectations, Dana.
Right.
I mean, just don't put your expectations on him. He's going to bump into the sides of the, like in bowling, they have those bumper rails. Mm-hmm. He's going to maybe have a few gutter balls. He may bump into the rails a few times, but the ultimate goal is that you preserve the relationship in the process.
Your big thing with the parenting beyond the rules is to focus on the relationship, which is the same thing that I talk about. What I talk about with dealing with a messy child is from the perspective of the child and a mother who focused on our relationship over her frustration with my messiness. So how did your focus on relationship influence your interactions with these messier kids during the teen years before you knew it was all going to be okay? Like, can you give us some examples of maybe times that you either chose to let something go or times that you decided, no, this is the time I've got to dig in and whatever? I mean, how did that focus influence those interactions?
Yeah, the big thing is I had to start letting go. I had to start letting go of certain requirements or standards that I thought were very important. And I started saying, you know what, your room isn't going to be like this. I've got to let that go. You're not going to live with me forever. You're going to live out on your own one day, but I want to preserve the relationship and the conversations that we can have instead of constantly harping on you. And then when you leave our home, it's more about, Mom always was riding me about this and this. No, I want them to talk about, I really kind of boil it down, Dana, there was one thing, I think you talk about this in your book, about keeping the kitchen sink clean. Mm-hmm. That was really the one thing as I got toward it was just crazy with all the children. Because Jeannie, well, I did say her name, but Jeannie wasn't the only one that was messy. I had a couple of others.
Poor Jeannie. You just outed her.
I know, right? Sorry. Your entire listening audience is going to see her. Now,
can I ask you a question real quick, though?
Yeah.
Is she the one who's an artist?
Yes.
See, that goes together.
Yes. Yeah. Everything in her life is outside of the box. Yes. She can because she's busy focusing on experiencing world and bringing beauty to life.
And she sees the world differently.
Very differently. And that's why I was talking about managing our expectations. When we stop and realize that God has a unique purpose and plan for these kids, and it's our goal to help them discover who they are and what they're supposed to be doing, then it takes it takes all of the other stuff and puts it in the right perspective. I need to help her develop into the woman she needs to be. I need to give her the opportunity to create beauty through her art. And that means that certain things just might not happen. And it still might not happen. I mean, she doesn't separate her clothes from whites, darks, and towels. They still all go in the washing machine, but that works for her.
Yeah.
That works for her. So listen, this works for you, that's fine. If you're going to be interfacing in this realm, this is just what I need you to do. But in your own area, in your space, kids got to have their own space, Dana. You know that. You're kind of like in the midst of that. Some of your kids need more space than others. Some of them, they don't. They're just not like that. But there was only one area, because it was a sanitary area, and it was that if you're going to use the kitchen after the kitchen's technically closed, you've got to clean up after yourself, because I come down the next morning and I want to be able to start breakfast. And that was it. And that became even a struggle, especially when the kids were in college, because we talked about, when the kids get older, it doesn't always change. And then their schedule gets busy and they start working, plus school, plus activities, and they don't have the margin. And if your child doesn't have that propensity toward, I just want to be clean and neat and tidy, that's going to be the last thing they think about. Mm-hmm. So you can come alongside them and model to them what it's like just to serve, because really it's a bother to you. It doesn't bother them one iota. So you just kind of go in, and I would tidy up the kitchen at the end of the day. If I really saw blatant disrespect or disregard for other family members, we'd have to address that.
Yeah. So tell me about household responsibilities as teenagers, because they do start to get so busy. One of the things for us is it's not guaranteed everybody's going to be here every single night for dinner or, at whatever time. So if you say we're going to have such and such thing on Saturday morning, we're all going to clean, somebody's going to be working or busy or doing an athletic event, or something's going to be going on. So how did you manage that kind of stuff as teenagers? Did you get rid of the chore list?
I never got rid of the chore list in a technical form, because people still needed to know like what needed to be done. Mm-hmm. But I did get rid of, hey, on this day, we're all working together, many hands make for light work. And that was a motto I had. I still believe it when they're younger, but you've got to start letting up on that. And what I did do is say, hey, listen, it's Monday. This is what I need you to get done by next Sunday. I gave them the whole week. Sometimes they would be doing their things at 11 o'clock at night, because teenagers, they like to stay up late, anything to, stay up a little later. So as long as you get it done in your time frame, I even had to start letting up a little on the level that they did it. And people are thinking, what do you mean? Did they not they only washed half a dish? No, they didn't wash half a dish, but I would lower the level of expectation again, because I had to have understanding. Kids just need to know we understand what a busy life looks like, and they are trying to be responsible with their school studies, which I would say is very important. Mm-hmm. With their jobs, we want them to be at their jobs a few minutes early and not 10 minutes late because they were trying to load the dishwasher. So we would, again, find areas that you can give them flexibility. And the big thing is bring them in on the conversation. Hey, listen, these are the things that we would need you to do this week. Do you feel that you can handle this? Again, do you think you can handle this? Not technically, are you physically capable in a sense of have you been trained to do it, but do you have the time in your schedule to be able to effectively do this well? Or what do you think? When you start asking them those questions, you get less resistance, because now all of a sudden they feel like they matter in the family, that you're respecting their time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that's really key, is to say, these are the things that need to be done. What do you have going on this week? Because how many times do they not tell me until right before, oh, wait, I have such and such. I can't do this on that day or whatever. That's good.
Yeah, and we don't always know what those expectations are. If they're in sports or music or theater, or let's say they're in, they're doing some online classes because they're in high school and they start changing. Everything starts to change, or they're at school and maybe the coach is giving them something, or maybe the English teacher is trying to help them with something they're struggling with. We don't know what those folks are asking of them for additional time on their already full schedule. And that is just a key that as our kids start to adjust, I talk about this in the book, Tana, as our teens start to adjust, a change, then parents need to adjust. That means there isn't a one-size parenting, and we don't, start with one thing and end with the exact same thing. We have to change. So master the art of the pivot. I'm giving parents permission. It's okay to adjust. It's okay to let some things go. And it might bother you a little bit, but let's think about, what do we want when our children don't have, when they're not in our home anymore, when they grow up, and what do we want? And I say, we want our kid to call us and say, hey, when's Thanksgiving dinner? Not, I don't want to go to Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a mess. There's going to be a ton of dishes. I don't have time for it. No, we want them to be like, FOMO. I don't want to miss out on being there with the family.
Right.
And I just want parents to get a vision of what their future can look like, with what their relationship can look like with their child. And I've seen, Dana, so many relationships broken and destroyed at the hand of unbending rules. Nope, I gave you this assignment. I told you it was going to be done. You didn't do it. Now, you don't get to go to your game, or you don't get to go to practice, or something like that. I'm not saying we don't have consequences, but I'm saying get a bigger picture in mind. Take their needs and their desires and their responsibilities into consideration, and bring them into the conversation.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Let's talk about the realities of kids moving in and out. So I do have a kid who shares a room right now, who will be going to college in, makes my heart want to stop, but in about a little over a year.
But you're only counting. That's only 52 weeks, right?
No, it's more than that, because it's not till after next year. But okay. So give me some logistics of how you do that. So I'll just tell you, my situation right now is his brother that he shares a room with is so excited about having his own room and wants to just donate his brother's bed and all of his stuff. So how do you work that? I mean, do you make it, okay, this person's leaving, but we're going to go ahead and leave this as a double room that you just get to have by yourself for a while? Or do you actually completely redo it and get all that person's stuff out? Your kids lived at home for college, right?
They did live at home for college. Yeah. And I will tell you, I'm glad that you're kind of considering that now.
I have no idea what to do, just so you know.
My kids started casting lots. I get so-and-so, we are going to do that. It depends on the child. And that's where, again, I'm giving parents permission to consider the needs of that specific child. Does that child who has been sharing a room with a sibling for maybe since, they were 1 year old, do they need that space? Do they need that sense of ownership? Do they need that time to be able to claim something as just theirs? Is there an opportunity to do that? Or, is there no place to store it? I mean, I know you, Dana, you probably toss everything. You're gone out. We're decluttering.
Well, I want my older one to feel like he has a home when he comes home for the weekend. So that's where I'm not sure. And maybe some of my readers can weigh in on this a little bit too, or my listeners, but because I'm just like, well, I don't want him to feel like I don't even have a place in my home.
No, you know what? But college kids, when they go away and they come home, depending on the temperament of that child, they're just as happy to sleep on the couch or on the floor, or you can take an extra mattress. For many years, Dana, I had just an extra mattress, and I literally would have a box spring and a mattress on top of that, or I would get rid of the box spring and I'd have two mattresses, so that when one child would have a friend over, or when that child would come back after living on their own, I would just pull that mattress off that other bed and bam, I've got a place for that child to sleep, and it's in their same room. It depends on the space that you have in your home.
Yeah.
It depends on the need of the child who might be coming back for a visit. And it depends on the need of the child who's been sharing a room. Every child that I had, I treated differently. When my kids started going to college, I had an extra room. Not everybody has an extra room. I just took that extra room, disassembled it with my belongings. And I kind of set that up as, hey, this is the room you're going to be in. Or I would move the other child out and into that room. Always with the mindset of, what is this communicating to each child? Because it's not just one, there's two people involved. What am I communicating as far as value and worth to each child? And it's going to be different. Like I said, with 5 different children, I had to do 5 different things. And some of the kids, they left the room. They didn't mind seeing their brother or sister's bed over there, and part of their their trophies and ribbons, or whatever they specifically had over there. They didn't care, because the other child would be there on weekends or something like that. It was a treat for them. But other children, they viewed it as an opportunity to expand and grow and become like more of an independent adult. And that just involves some conversations, Dana, that you have with your child. What are you looking for? What is it you want? Can we do this? Is it even possible? It might not even be possible. And in that case, then you make the best of that situation. And then you talk to them. You don't talk at them. You don't say, this is how we're doing it. I'm sorry you don't like it. Why do that when all you have to say is, all right, this is what we have. This is what we need. Do you have an idea of how we can make this work? Your kids are smart. They can figure out a propose and then say, okay, I will consider what you've said, and Dad and I will talk about it if you're married, and we'll come up with a solution and we'll talk to you about it. Not just Mom and Dad are going to lay down the law.
It's going to be okay. That's what you're saying.
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
Because see, I'm afraid he's going to go, I don't need a bed. I'm never coming back.
I think that's every parent's fear. But you know, when they here's a couple things I've learned about college kids. They're always hungry because they're broke. So if you have a full refrigerator and you make dinner and there's some leftovers, they're going to be popping in more often than you think if they're going to college and, you know, in your hometown.
Right.
And they'll probably bring a friend, like a roommate or their dorm buddy, and they'll be like, hey, come to my parents' house because I know Mom's going to have food. That was just a surefire way to have them come back around. And the benefit of that, Dana, is then they get to see the siblings. Because surprisingly, or what was most surprising to me, Dana, is your son is going to be moving towards something. So there's excitement and anticipation, and the anticipation of all this freedom. You know, I can go to a ball game or stay out or whatever without Mom and Dad like texting me, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? But your siblings and even you yourself, Dana, might have a sense of loss or grieving because they're not moving on to something else. It's just like the same old grind plus a few extra chores because now they got to pick up the extra work from the sibling being gone. So trying to play up to the adult that, you know, because he will be an adult that's moving on. This is really exciting for you. Don't forget your brother and sister. See, they're still here doing the same thing, and they're really going to miss you. Would you please text them? Would you give them a call? Would you try to come home at least once a week for an hour, or maybe come home and take them to McDonald's or something, and I'll treat. Paint a picture for them of what life will be like when they're not there, that they will be missed. There is a void, and we want to maintain that relationship with them even when they don't have to be there.
Right. Okay. I have one last question because I think we've been talking and talking. This was a question that I was asked at a recent speaking engagement last Monday. And I'm going to tell you what my answer was, but you've actually lived this situation. And so I want to know if this was a good answer or not, because I always try to deal in actual real life and not hypotheticals. And since I haven't personally experienced this, you know, it's hard for me to talk about. So anyway, so the question was, what about the kids who want to use, they've moved out and moved on, but they want to use your house as their storage unit? So my answer, I know you've read some of my stuff, but I'm sure you haven't read all of it. But so like my big concept is the container concept. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about like plastic containers. I'm talking about space is limited, and the amount of space that you have available determines how much stuff you can keep. And so, you know, current life, the people actually living in the house right now get priority. My advice was to designate, this is the amount of space that I have that I can designate to storage for your stuff and still be able to live life the way that I need to be able to live it in my house right now for the people who are living in it. And in this amount of space, you know, I've got 4 kids. And so if I divide this space by 4 and get them each a plastic tub to where it fills up that space, this is the amount of stuff that you can store in my house for right now. Maybe not forever, because I might need that space for something in the future, but this is the amount of space. So the beauty of giving someone in any situation with clutter a container is fill it with your favorite stuff first, and then it naturally limits and helps you determine what you love more than, we know what's container worthy. And, you know, because you can keep anything, you just can't keep it all. So, you know, put your favorite stuff in first. Anything that doesn't fit, you'll just need to get rid of. So do you feel like that is practical advice? How do you manage this issue?
Yeah, and it was different with each one because kids starting off, they're not starting off with a big old house. They usually
Right.
start off with a 1 or 2 bedroom, or they've got a roommate. So they're limited in their space anyway. But your container method actually works. I would just have my kids, as they were moving out, I would have them make a pile. What they really don't want. Now, here's the kicker, Dana. Some of the stuff they toss, you might be going, oh, but I remember, I don't really want you to get rid of that. And you're in there talking them to hold on to that baseball bat or hold on to, that jersey, because you remember them when they played that game that day and they won. And there's sentimental value that they attach and that you actually attach to things that you don't expect. Because remember, this is their childhood. This is something you've been heavily invested in. What we have done is consider the space that they have, realistic space, not just, hey, I know you have more space than that. You're just filling with a bunch of your stuff, like additional stuff. And I would say, go through your things, try to put it all in this. And my kids got 2 boxes. Mm-hmm. And I know you're thinking, gosh, that's a lot of kids, but they all didn't move out like at the same time. Right. So, and I still have the girls, some of the girls' belongings, especially my daughter who's a caterer. I still have her catering stuff, but I have her memento stuff that she wants to give to her daughter or my grandchildren. And she just doesn't have space because they have this squatty little place that they're living in because they're just starting life. So I think putting in perspective what they are moving into, what they have available, and what really matters. And that's going to be a decision kind of like both of you have. But you've been teaching your kids declutter. I think that's not going to be an issue. For mine, again, they toss stuff that I wish they hadn't. And they laughed at me because, Dana, you'll kill me. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry, listeners.
We're all going to relate. Go.
I have been known to go through the garbage and pull out a few things that they trashed because I'm like, oh no, their grandmother gave them that.
We've all done it. We all do that.
So be prepared for the emotional connection that you might not be expecting. But they can't use your place like a pod. I mean, who has that kind of space?
Right.
And, they will quickly start to realize after about a year, I usually have them go back through it and say, hey, is there more stuff you want to get rid of here? And they'll do it.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
And it's a slow process of them learning that whole thing that you've been teaching. If you're not, like you do it in your home and you teach that to all your readers and listeners that, listen, if you haven't touched it in X amount of time, then you probably don't need it. Toss it. You're going to be teaching that to them on a beginner level as a young adult.
Well, and they're going to experience it for real. They're going to experience, how many times do we all, that's my big thing on re-decluttering is so much easier than decluttering. So have it for that amount of time. And a year is a good thing, celebrate the fact that you've been gone for a year and now look back through your stuff and get rid of some.
Yeah.
A celebration.
There might be some things surprisingly, I ended up holding on to longer than I expected. And that was the college years because they're in college. We know that's not their permanent home, right? So like the Christmas ornaments you've been saving up or the photos of them that you want to give them, their photos when they grow up. Those were things I hadn't really thought about until my son got married. And it was a hard time actually because I went through all the Christmas belongings and when he got married for their first Christmas, that was my gift to them, was giving my son and his wife all his Christmas ornaments and decorations that had mattered to him over the years. Same with photos. I gave him all his childhood photos. I didn't want to get rid of those right away, and I didn't want to give them to him when he was in college because they didn't mean anything.
Right.
Certain things our kids start to attach greater meaning to as they move out of the college years and more into a career or adult life, and they start to see the value of memories in a sense of photos and Christmas. Not everything. But, my kids tossed all their trophies after they finished college. And I thought, wow. But the reality is, there was wisdom in that. They popped off the little label that said what they had won. They didn't need to actually keep the whole trophy.
That is so smart.
Yeah, and then we framed it. So then I took all those little trophies they had won and awards they had received, and I took it to, like a place, and I created this frame for them. So it had it all. And it wasn't in a box collecting junk. It was a frame that they were able to use on the wall that I don't know how long they'll hold on to it. Maybe till they have children. Maybe, longer than that. I don't know. But that was a great way of being able to preserve something they had worked hard for, an accomplishment. And it reminded them, I worked hard for that. This was a really great game. And I use that as a way to inspire them to keep pushing and working hard and learning. And I don't know where I got that. It's actually my husband, because I found a lot of his trophies up in our attic. And he says, I think we can get rid of those like 30 years later. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a great idea.
Well, we're actually dealing right now with my husband's father passed away about a year and a half ago, or I don't know, time flies. Anyway, and he was just such an eclectic. He loved doing all kinds of stuff. So he was like a state archery champion. And in his adulthood, he was a karate champion. Like he ran in the circles with Chuck Norris and people like that. So it was like, this is a huge part of who his dad is. And he has so many trophies. And my husband's like, what do I do with my dad who passed away at 89, who would be 90 now? What do I do with his trophies? It's stuff. So I love that idea of popping off the explanation of what it was. So I'm totally going to tell him that tonight. That's such a great idea.
We also did that for someone who was in the military, one of our family members. He had all these ribbons and awards and the flag, the flag that they're given. We framed the flag, put that in a 3D, what was that? What is that called?
They had those
shadow box type thing.
Yes.
And then we took all these ribbons and medals and we put them in a shadow box type frame. It makes for great conversation when people come in. It's a reminder of his service to his country. And I thought, that's a great way to do that. We've also done that with a lot of my daughter, who is a photographer, and she has been featured in Vogue Italia. She was featured, 12 of her images were featured last year in the magazine.
My goodness.
So instead of like having, we just created these frames and we put them up on the wall, and they tell a story. So everything is about, does this tell a story? Does it help us to remember something that truly is meaningful for the legacy of our family? Dan, I'm dealing with that right now with my mom. I am not at a point yet where I'm able to get rid of her clothes. Too much sentimental. I remember, she went to Disney in this, or she did that. It's a process. And you do a beautiful job in all that you teach women about decluttering and being organized. You do consider that. And it is a process of learning how and when and letting go and donating, and everything doesn't go in a trash bag. Giving yourself
grace to take some time with that and to go through the grieving process that I know you're going through after your mom died. Yeah.
And don't you find that's important?
Very important.
Yeah. So, as your listeners grow and their children grow up and we face the death of our parents and even our grandparents, what is it that we want to cling to and hold on to? And I'll be honest with you, my one daughter, she took a scarf from my mom. She just said, can I have a scarf? That just means the world to her. It's something she just wraps herself in, and that reminds her of the love from her grandmother. And I thought, man, that's just like a small little memento. It's not the silver and the china and the crystal and all that other stuff.
But it brings back all the happy feelings.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That one item brings back all those feelings that you're afraid of losing if you get rid of all of the stuff, and just that whole keep one. That's great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I want you to tell people again the name of your book and where they can find you to connect with you online.
Great. You can find my book anywhere major retailers are, like Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Christian Book Distributor, Amazon. You can. I know many libraries are actually carrying it. You can find me on Facebook at conniealbers.author, on Instagram at Connie Albers, or at my website, conniealbers.com. And we are excited at what God's doing. Your child is a masterpiece in the making, and you need to remember to paint pictures of possibilities.
I love it.